Vestments. Using the blue, purple, and scarlet fabrics, they made the woven vestments for ministering in the sanctuary. Also they made the sacred vestments for Aaron, as God had commanded Moses. Ephod. They made the ephod using gold and blue, purple, and scarlet fabrics and finely twisted linen. They hammered out gold leaf and sliced it into threads that were then worked into designs in the blue, purple, and scarlet fabric and fine linen. They made shoulder pieces fastened at the two ends. The decorated band was made of the same material, gold, blue, purple, and scarlet material, and of fine twisted linen, and of one piece with it, just as God had commanded Moses. They mounted the onyx stones in a setting of filigreed gold and engraved the names of the sons of Israel on them, then fastened them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod as memorial stones for the Israelites, just as God had commanded Moses. Breastpiece. They made a breastpiece designed like the ephod from gold, blue, purple, and scarlet material, and fine twisted linen. Doubled, the breastpiece was 9 inches square. They mounted 4 rows of precious gemstones on it. First row, carnelian, topaz, emerald. Second row, ruby, sapphire, crystal. Third row, jacinth, agate, amethyst. Fourth row, beryl, onyx, jasper. The stones were mounted in a gold filigree. The 12 stones corresponded to the names of the sons of Israel, 12 names engraved as on a seal, one for each of the 12 tribes. They made braided chains of pure gold for the breastpiece, like cords. They made 2 settings of gold filigree and 2 rings of gold, put the 2 rings at the 2 ends of the breastpiece, and fastened the 2 ends of the cords to the 2 rings at the end of the breastpiece. Then they fastened the cords to the settings of filigree, attaching them to the shoulder pieces of the ephod in front. Then they made 2 rings of gold and fastened them to the 2 ends of the breastpiece on its inside edge facing the ephod. They made 2 more rings of gold and fastened them in the front of the ephod to the lower part of the 2 shoulder pieces, near the seam above the decorated band of the ephod. The breastpiece was fastened by running a cord of blue through its rings to the rings of the ephod so that it rested secure on the decorated band of the ephod and wouldn't come loose, just as God had commanded Moses. Robe. They made the robe for the ephod entirely of blue. The opening of the robe at the center was like a collar, the edge hemmed so that it wouldn't tear. On the hem of the robe they made pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet material and fine twisted linen. They also made bells of pure gold and alternated the bells and pomegranates, a bell and a pomegranate, all around the hem of the robe that was worn for ministering, just as God had commanded Moses. They also made the tunics of fine linen, the work of a weaver, for Aaron and his sons, the turban of fine linen, the linen hats, the linen underwear made of fine twisted linen, and sashes of fine twisted linen, blue, purple, and scarlet material and embroidered, just as God had commanded Moses. They made the plate, the sacred crown, of pure gold and engraved on it as on a seal, holy to God. They attached a blue cord to it and fastened it to the turban, just as God had commanded Moses. That completed the work of the dwelling, the tent of meeting. The people of Israel did what God had commanded Moses. They did it all. They presented the dwelling to Moses. The tent and all its furnishings, fastening hooks, frames, crossbars, posts, bases, tenting of tanned ram skins, tenting of dolphin skins, veil of the screen, chest of the testimony with its poles and atonement-cover table with its utensils, and the bread of the presence lampstand of pure gold and its lamps all fitted out, and all its utensils, and the oil for the light gold altar, anointing oil, fragrant incense screen for the entrance to the tent, bronze altar with its bronze grate, its poles and all its utensils, wash basin and its base hangings for the courtyard, its posts and bases, screen for the gate of the courtyard, its cords and its pegs, utensils for ministry in the dwelling, the tent of meeting, woven vestments for ministering in the sanctuary, sacred vestments for Aaron the priest, and his sons when serving as priests. The Israelites completed all the work, just as God had commanded. Moses saw that they had done all the work and done it exactly as God had commanded. Moses blessed them. Moses finished the work. God spoke to Moses, on the first day of the first month, set up the dwelling, the tent of meeting. Place the chest of the testimony in it and screen the chest with the curtain. Bring in the table and set it, arranging its lampstand and lamps. Place the gold altar of incense before the chest of the testimony and hang the curtain at the door of the dwelling. Place the altar of whole burnt offering at the door of the dwelling, the tent of meeting. Place the wash basin between the tent of meeting and the altar and fill it with water. Set up the courtyard on all sides and hang the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard. Then take the anointing oil and anoint the dwelling and everything in it, Consecrate it and all its furnishings so that it becomes holy. Anoint the altar of whole burnt offering and all its utensils, consecrating the altar so that it is completely holy. Anoint the wash basin and its base, consecrate it. Finally, bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the tent of meeting and wash them with water. Dress Aaron in the sacred vestments. Anoint him. Set him apart to serve me as priest. Bring his sons and put tunics on them. Anoint them, just as you anointed their father, to serve me as priests. Their anointing will bring them into a perpetual priesthood, down through the generations. Moses did everything God commanded. He did it all. On the first day of the first month of the second year, the dwelling was set up. Moses set it up, he laid its bases, erected the frames, placed the crossbars, set the posts, spread the tent over the dwelling, and put the covering over the tent, just as God had commanded Moses. He placed the testimony in the chest, inserted the poles for carrying the chest, and placed the lid, the atonement cover, on it. He brought the chest into the dwelling and set up the curtain, screening off the chest of the testimony, just as God had commanded Moses. He placed the table in the tent of meeting on the north side of the dwelling, outside the curtain, and arranged the bread there before God, just as God had commanded him. He placed the lampstand in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the south side of the dwelling and set up the lamps before God, just as God had commanded him. Moses placed the gold altar in the tent of meeting in front of the curtain and burned fragrant incense on it, just as God had commanded him. He placed the screen at the entrance to the dwelling. He set the altar of whole burnt offering at the door of the dwelling, the tent of meeting, and offered up the whole burnt offerings and the grain offerings, just as God had commanded Moses. He placed the wash basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and filled it with water for washing. Moses and Aaron and his sons washed their hands and feet there. When they entered the tent of meeting and when they served at the altar, they washed, just as God had commanded Moses. Finally, he erected the courtyard all around the dwelling and the altar, and put up the screen for the courtyard entrance. Moses finished the work. The cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of God filled the dwelling. Moses couldn't enter the tent of meeting because the cloud was upon it, and the glory of God filled the dwelling. Whenever the cloud lifted from the dwelling, the people of Israel set out on their travels, but if the cloud did not lift, they wouldn't set out until it did lift. The cloud of God was over the dwelling during the day and the fire was in it at night, visible to all the Israelites in all their travels.